This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. We're living in a time when you can be born and raised on a small farm in a small place in the middle of nowhere and still be a philosopher, a worldly intellectual, a person with incredible depth of experience and breadth of experience, someone who's lived through tragedy and someone who's remade themselves according to the lessons they've learned in a full and challenging and usually rewarding life. You can be a person who is unique in the world in a place like that. And I know this because my guest this week proved it. He's done all those things in a place like that by the age of 19. This is my talk with Nick Hazelton. So I'm sitting in a van in a field that's full of yaks in a little tiny place called Philemouth?
Yeah, we're a little ways outside.
Is that right?
We're in actually RL, or Hoskins.
Not even Philemouth.
Yeah.
Oregon. 5 miles west of Corvallis, correct?
Ooh, more than 5. I think we're 30. I think
30
we're
miles?
20. Yeah, I think we're away. Maybe not 30, it's 20.
We got to start this whole thing over. 30 miles. Yeah, so we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Between sort of the bigger towns of Salem and Corvallis in Oregon and the Pacific Ocean. How far are we from the coast?
It's an hour's drive to Newport, but probably as the crow flies, it might be 15 to 20 miles even.
So we're in the Willamette Valley, which is one of the most beautiful places. And this part of the Willamette Valley is known as being one of the most beautiful parts of the Willamette Valley. I love this place. And I was just happy to come here because I have been cut off from nature for a long time. I've been living through screens for more than a year now. So when my friend Nick Hazelton here said that he'd be willing to be on the podcast, I was very excited because I like Nick and he's super interesting, but also because I knew I'd get to come out to his farm, which I'd never seen before. So I'm with Nick Hazelton at his family farm, and he's a yak farmer, and he's a very impressive, extraordinary person for those reasons, but also for a couple of other reasons. One is that he had a philosophy and politics, really more philosophy, right? Podcast for how long? 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years.
How many episodes?
94.
94 episodes in which you were talking about philosophy. And you started that podcast when you were how old?
15.
15 years old. And you did it when you were 15 and 16 years old, a philosophy podcast, which had a following, did it not?
Yeah, I think I might have gotten in the few hundreds in some of those downloads, some of those episodes.
Yeah.
Which is more than what I get now.
Yeah. For a 14-year-old or 15, for anyone doing a philosophy podcast, that's impressive. So that's impressive. It's impressive that you're a yak farmer. It's impressive that you live in this beautiful place. It's impressive that you live in this terrible, disgusting, smelly van. It smells like weed. Oops. Is your dad going to listen to this?
It's fine.
They're right in the big house behind us. Mm-hmm. The big house. We're the field slaves out here. Nick is the youngest, by far, the youngest guest on Unregistered. He is 19 years old. And I met him this last summer when he was 18 years old. And I had heard about him a little bit, and he had invited me on his podcast, on your podcast, right? And I said yes, and it never happened because he didn't think I was impressive enough or something.
Yeah.
Smart enough for you. So I finally met you in person this last summer, and I was immediately impressed with another thing about you, which is that you hold yourself or carry yourself with a remarkable poise and maturity, which I'm sure you've heard before. And
I don't think so.
Really?
No.
Oh, I mean, there's, you're still, don't get me wrong. You still, in many ways are a very young guy and, a teenager in some certain ways, but there's no
juvenile delinquent is more what I get.
You were very comfortable. You know what it was? You were very comfortable with two things: with your own mind, and with me, with adults, so-called adults, and that much more so than most 18 and 19-year-olds. So I've been a college professor for more than 20 years, so I've been around a whole lot of 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. So I know something about this. I'm an expert. And you stand out. I mean, of all the Columbia and New School and Occidental College freshmen and sophomores I've known, you would be at the very top in terms of maturity and intellectual sophistication, for sure. So we got that done with. That's the quick introduction to the amazing Nick Hazelton. What I want to do next, because you're an expert in philosophy, I don't want to spend much time on that. I want to see how good you are at history.
Ooh.
You ready?
I'm a little bit. Before I was into philosophy, I was into history, but it's compared to you, I don't know.
I'm a historian, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to test you. You have had not enough tests in your life because you also left school when you were how old?
16.
16 years old. You dropped out of high school, which means you're a failure. Well, obviously, living in a van. Oh, by the way, this is a van, and the river
That's right.
is right there, is it not?
A van.
The Luckamute.
By the river.
We can you see the Luckamute from here? Almost.
Well, it's a cliff, so we can't see the water, but that's...
You could throw a rock into the Luckamute River from where we're sitting. That's how bad it is for this guy. You're pretty much done. I mean,
right. This is as far as it goes.
Just take the emergency brake off this van and just let it go into the river, Nick, because you're done. You and Chris Farley. So, no, you're a pretty amazing human being, actually, and for a lot of reasons, which I think I laid out. But what I want to know, I want to know a lot of things about you, and so I want to do that by testing you on history because you're a high school dropout. You stopped taking tests when you were 16. And so let's give you a test. Let's see how well you can do some history. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. This is the historical project I want to do, and I want to do it with you. We're going to write history right now. Okay. We're going to write the history of you.
Okay.
Okay. So the good news is that won't take long because you're only 19 years old.
Right.
But what's the deal? How did you get to this place? Who the hell are you?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I've been paying attention to you for a while since you've been on School Sucks, so it's really fun to get to talk to you. And it was really cool to get to meet you this last summer.
So you were like, what, 8?
When what was I? I don't remember when I first... When were you on School Sucks? It was
a good 5 years ago.
I think I beat you on. I think I was on School Sucks before you, but I'm not sure.
See,
I was episode 300.
We
I'm very proud
already have a little rivalry going on here.
No.
By the way, I am, we think exactly Nick's dad's age.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel, I don't know what it makes me feel.
Old.
Well, it makes me feel cool because I'm in the van and Dad's in the big house. So I'm down here with the field slaves.
It's true. I don't think my dad has spent this much time in this trailer.
Really?
He comes to visit sometimes, but he usually leaves.
Mark. Yeah. All right. So
where
were you born?
I was born in Corvallis, Oregon. But I've been raised here at... I'll give up my address. It's already online. 14420 Wildwood Road. This is where the farm's at and where I've lived my whole life.
Yeah, he said to me, because I'd never been here, he said, you'll know you're at our house when the gravel ends. No, not
when the pavement ends.
Sorry, when the pavement ends and then the gravel and then it's dirt. And it was like, that was a little bit of a lie because it's a good quarter mile, half a mile of dirt.
I didn't. But we are the first on the right.
My poor little bougie Prius could barely make it here. So, but I did barely. Actually, coming up your driveway, with
There's
all the ruts, you have to have 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm just not that much of a redneck. I can't quite make it. So you were born in Corvallis, which is down the road, but you were raised in this house here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaning you were really born here in
Pretty
this
much.
house. So your
Yeah,
parents
there's,
were
like,
living
2 days that the first days of my life.
Oh yeah, that doesn't count.
corrals.
No, you were born.
I was born here.
You were born on this plot of land we're sitting on.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
there you go. That's what we're talking about. And you're still here.
Yeah, I haven't left.
And you don't want to leave.
No, I really enjoy it. Yeah, I don't know.
You don't want to leave.
It
is pretty.
There was at a point where I did want to leave, where I just decided, you know, what is here for me. I wanted to go live with the libertarians in New Hampshire for a while, but then as I started
forgot
farming.
to interject this. Nick also fancies himself an anarchist libertarian.
Yeah, I don't call myself an anarcho-capitalist anymore, but I do use that.
You know why? Because you found out how hard capitalism is.
That's right. I did. That actually, I would say that has been a big factor in.
Because you're also a capitalist. Which we didn't mention that either.
Yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I sell yak meat. The yak that I have is my business.
Yeah. It's hard, man. Right?
It is. It's difficult, but I'm not taking. Well, I'm getting some help from my parents, but I'm not taking the dole. But it is hard.
You know what happens when a whole population lives in places like this, like in vans by the river? You know what happens?
No, what happens?
Communism happens.
Yeah.
That's when they turn.
It's terrible. This is where I've been drifting a little bit towards I'm more community oriented than I used to be, and that's why I've
you know
I've
what
changed.
happens? They taste the poverty, you know, and then they start using words like community, and the next thing you know, there's a gulag where the farm once was. So that's why I'm here, actually, is to make sure you don't go that route. I'd rather you just stay poor and miserable in capitalist America than live in Soviet Hazleton, Oregon. So, okay, back to you, Nick.
Yeah.
So you're born here, and you're still here. And who are your parents at that time? What were they? Who were they?
I guess I would call them, not quite hippies, but the next generation of Oregon hippie farmers is what I'm calling them. I know a few. There's a few of us here in Kings Valley. They're just, I don't know, they're organic farmers, very small farmers. That's kind of what they started out of. Well, my dad's been an engineer. He went to Oregon State University. So did my mother. He went into engineering, become an industrial engineer. And then my mom went into forestry, and she's worked for the Oregon Department of Forestry for, longer than I've been around. So that's but at first, we moved here. The land's been in my family for a while.
Wasn't your dad in industrial engineering?
Yes.
Like factory stuff, right?
Yeah. The main thing that he did is he worked for HP, and, so he was designing the machines that made, their parts.
So you're all about being close to nature. Mm-hmm. The people who live in this place, generally speaking, are people like that who want to be close to nature. Yeah. I know a lot of these hippie farmers you're referring to in this area. Not a lot. I know several. I've met several from living here for a while. Mm-hmm. They all are into this too, being close to nature. You've said this repeatedly. That's what you want in your life, is to be close to nature. Your dad was as far away from nature as you can get, right?
Right.
Being an HP, whatever he was, engineer.
Yeah.
Hewlett Packard you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. He's not as much of an outdoors guy.
But wasn't he like... He was designing like big stuff, right? Wasn't big machinery?
Yeah, he's designing like the factory machinery.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
So he's as far away, right?
Right.
As you can get from nature.
Pretty much.
And so did he come back here? He came here to get back or to...
I don't know exactly where he decided he wanted to become a farmer. I haven't asked him that. I don't know exactly what it was. I think that he had, so I think that maybe the nature thing might come from my mom. That's why she was a forester, but more of like the intellectual side is the Hazeltons. So I think, he was very, I think at my age, very similar, maybe not as right wing, not from that position that I came from at the age, but I think that he was just as interested in politics and maybe not as much philosophy, but definitely interested in the same stuff that I was. So I think, maybe that came from a desire to be out in a community or in a smaller community, because he ended up starting that charter school.
Yeah, stop skipping ahead now.
Sorry.
I'm running this project. So your mom is the reason you're here physically, geographically, because you told me, I didn't know this until we were talking before we turned on the mics. This house, this land was owned by your great-grandparents?
Yeah. Yeah.
Her grandparents in the 1920s, right? They purchased it.
It was either 20s or 30s, but I think it's 20s. I think so.
And then her parents built the house that you were raised in, which we're sitting near. And so this is your family's land, 4 generations.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they've been close to nature for a long time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And your mom didn't want to leave, clearly.
Yeah, no, she's been in the same area. She went off and did her like a Peace Corps thing, but otherwise she's been here. She's
Peace
been in
Corps,
Oregon.
really? Where?
Senegal.
Oh.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
She enjoyed it. She was teaching them forestry.
Did she bring peace?
I don't know about that.
How effective was that?
Yeah, I don't know about Senegal that much. You don't hear very much about it in the news, so maybe they were successful.
No. You know what the Senegalese do in the United States?
No.
Their main profession, I don't think this is totally a joke. Well, at least in New York City, if you're from New York, you know what I'm talking about already. So the Senegalese are well known as the guys on the street who sell the fake watches, the knockoffs, the Gucci's, right? Yeah, with those briefcases.
Yeah.
And they'll be walking down the street and then they'll just put it down on the sidewalk and then they'll open it up and show all these fancy looking watches, and then you realize, and they're selling them for like $50 when it's like Gucci and Cartier and whatever, and then you realize it's a fake.
No, this isn't real. Yeah.
So that is one of the reasons why New York City is on lockdown now. 9/11 was the second reason it's on lockdown. If you know anything about New York City,
nothing.
There's a cop every block, more than every block. So there's more police per capita, I think, than any place in human history right now in New York City. Yeah. So the Senegalese, people complained about the Senegalese selling watches on the street because it was this horrible public nuisance. And so Giuliani, the great mayor Rudolph Giuliani at the time, said, "Yeah, I'm going to stop this." And he imposed these new, quality of life laws, and so made that illegal. So this is a huge tangent, but I'm just going to go anyway.
Yeah, that's fine.
So when I was living in New York City, my then wife was once walking down the street, and a Senegalese guy ran over her, and she smashed her head fell backward and smashed her head into some scaffolding. Wow. And immediately she said 5 to 10 people just emerged out of the crowd as undercover cops who were just there all the time. And then we realized that there were just cops everywhere in New York City, and swooped in and arrested the guy and put her in an ambulance, and boom, just like that.
Wow.
So yeah, your mom didn't do much in terms of like transforming the Senegalese country to make that a place that would keep people there rather than coming to our shores and bring filth to our streets and endangering our citizens. Can I go talk to her? She's
not here today, but
that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay,
go tell her.
So she did the Peace Corps thing because Kennedy told her to. That was Kennedy's thing. Before you send in people like Nick's mom, and then the Marines come shortly after was the whole plan there. They just never got to that part. The second part with Senegal because it wasn't worth their time.
They didn't have oil there.
Sorry, I'm back. Okay, so that's okay. So we got that part of you. Your mom, nature, this land. That's something, man. Like, I will stop talking, I promise, eventually. No, I am really struck by, you are so interesting in so many ways, and there's so many paradoxes. As I said to you, you have an extraordinarily large mind and an extraordinarily large life on one level, which is that you've been studying everything, really, but not just philosophy, but politics and even history and all sorts of stuff, right? Since the jump. Yeah. I mean, since you were little, being an intellectual, really, reading books and doing all this stuff. And you live online, you had a podcast. I mean, so you were talking with people, communicating with people all over the world, probably, right? Yeah. And then you have a very tiny life, geographically and demographically, which is that you've been in this one place and around very few people.
Yeah.
Your
rural white America.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you want to say about that?
It's interesting because I get at this point I'm not so humble about my intellect. Like there's plenty of people who can outsmart me. I'm not a genius, and I'm not right 100% of the time. I've been made to be a fool plenty of times.
You're just starting out,
right? Sure. So that's why I think that I can have some confidence. I think I have shown that I do have an intellect that most people can't I don't know if I would say hold up to, but I can at least throw my weight around in an intellectual conversation, despite not having any certificate of, or diploma or anything. But I've thought a lot, and especially recently, I've been thinking a lot, like how the hell did I get here? Because I think because I don't know. It's interesting, and maybe we'll get into it more. I won't give you the why I think I've been this way. But I think I have noticed that there is something here. Like, what I feel like I'm special in some way because I'm doing things that other people aren't, and I'm talking about stuff that most people don't want to talk about. That's what I've seen, and I do wonder how did it.
Well, you're unusual in every way.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because also, so you're like completely upside down, right? In regards to the rest of society. So most Americans are not intellectuals. Mm-hmm. Most Americans are not political. Most Americans don't know anything about philosophy. Most Americans don't do any of that stuff. Okay, and also most Americans are very migratory, right? There's more and more people are moving more and more from place to place. They live in many places by the time they're 18 or 19.
Yeah.
They change jobs constantly, much more than ever before, right? So you're a complete weirdo in both scores, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. And where it really started is that kind of I realized quickly that I wasn't getting what I wanted from the mainstream. I wanted to talk about politics, and I didn't get that from everybody around me. 'Cause that's what I thought was important. For I got introduced to that stuff by my Hazelton side of the family, just ideas of even the idea that you would talk about politics. That's where it started. I know that, but there was nobody outside of my family that I could find except maybe a few teachers and then people online. And I think that's where it started with the curiosity. And I don't, that maybe that's the genetic thing, was that I was just curious. And then as I became an anarchist, I became much more rebellious, and I was able to. That gave me the power, at least to doubt authority. Then maybe I don't need to do what everybody else is saying I need to do, which is go through school, go to college, get the nice job, and start a family. During high school, I realized, hey, I don't have to do that, and that's where I decided, wow, I don't have to fit in, and I guess I've always been a little bit of. I want to stand out. There's always been that curiosity and a drive to stand out. And that's always been in me for since I was really young.
Well, you've succeeded so far.
I think so.
But again, you've just started out, so we'll see.
Yeah.
So all right, so you're born here, and do you remember your father and other Hazeltons talking about politics and big ideas when you were little?
Yeah. I guess I don't really, and I have a spotty memory before middle school. I don't really know what I was doing.
Because of the weed, Nick. It's the weed. It's already affected you.
But I don't remember where it started. Where I do remember kind of taking an interest was in the 2008 election. It was Obama and McCain, I believe.
So you were how old?
I think it was 10. Born in 98. Yeah, about 10.
It's precocious already. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was, and it started out like I've always I started out as a very easy to push around. I'm a small kid. I've always been small. I weigh like 125 pounds now. But I've always been passive, and that's kind of the way I was raised. Raised by pacifist Christians. Both my parents are. They're not originally not raised Mennonite, but now they go to a Mennonite church. And as I was young, I was taught a lot of Quaker stuff.
Your parents are Mennonite pacifists?
Yes.
And they converted to that?
Yes. So my Hazelton side is not very religious. My dad found religion through my mom, and because she's like, I'm not marrying a non-Christian. So he's like, well, I like this woman. I'm going to become a Christian. That's what he told me. And my grandfather, who served in World War II, not too long after the Korean War, he also served in the Korean War.
He served in both?
Yeah. He was a merchant marine, so he didn't see combat.
Okay.
I mean, he saw it, but wasn't in it. You know what I mean? So he became anti-war very quickly, and so I got a little bit of some of that leaning from my grandparents on my mom's side, and so I think that's where she kind of came out. And she's always been more of a liberal Democrat, And my dad at the time was more libertarian. And this is how I found out about libertarianism. And during that 2008 election, I was my friends, because here in rural Oregon is interesting because we have a lot of conservative people. I'd say most of the counties are red, but then there's a lot of liberals mixed in, and there's Portland and some of the big cities.
Yeah.
So there's a big split in my friend group. They were like, just nobody knew anything about politics. They're just doing what their parents said. And they're like, oh, I can't believe you're voting for McCain. And I can't believe you're voting for Obama. It's like, you're not voting. But that's what we said. And at the time, I was like, well, I don't want to split my friend group. Let's find a new way. So I just asked my dad, well, who are you voting for? And he told me Bob Barr. And I was like, wow, who's that?
Yeah, that was when the Libertarian Party made a bad move.
Yep.
So your dad was a libertarian then?
Yeah, he was
self-identified?
That's what he said. That's what he called himself.
Yeah. Okay.
The libertarian.
You said he was not right-wing like you are.
Yeah, I think he's more lefty. So my grandfather is very right-wing, kind of more of the paleo-conservative, kind of where, he's very interested in right-wing economics. He wasn't really familiar with some of my anarchist stuff I brought to him, like the Austrian school, but Hayek, and he was maybe you could call a classical liberal with some more.
So when you say right-wing economics, that's what you mean? Hayekian, free market, laissez-faire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not fascism.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Sorry, I forget.
See, when I think of, and of course these terms are whatever you want to make of them, but for me, right-wing needs to be a part of the fascist tradition. Mm-hmm. But that's okay.
That's fair.
So I got it. So libertarian, classical liberal. That's pretty clear. That's your dad.
Yeah, I think. Well, that was my grandfather. And then I think my dad had more of a rebellious streak, like maybe Hazeltons do. And he drifted more to the left. And I think that he's. I don't think he ever. I think I convinced him. He's been the greatest person probably for my intellectual exploration because he's very familiar with doing that, and he was very good at picking up the other side. So I'd say something and he'd just argue with me.
Your grandfather?
Your father? Both. Well, mostly my father, I guess.
And your father ran the school you dropped out of. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So, but clearly he was some kind of influence on you, right?
Definitely.
It's kind of amazing also that you dropped out of your father's school. But, okay, so there's a lineage there too. So on that side, on your dad's side, you got the politics, and you got the sort of classical liberal stuff going on, libertarian-ish stuff going back generations. On your mom's side, you got the land. Mm-hmm. And the nature going back generations.
Yeah.
So, so here you are. So your mom's not into politics?
She'll talk about it when it comes up at the dinner table. She has her opinions, but she's definitely not as into it as me and my dad are. She would take more things personally than me and my dad would, because there's a difference between an intellectual and somebody who's who has these ideas because of other reasons. I've beat up my ideas so many times, it doesn't matter what you say to me, but you know what I mean? So she's just not interested as much as we are. Oh,
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Story of my life. So, so your dad sounds like was sort of a soft libertarian, not really that into it. And you are hardcore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting because my parents were socialists, and they were pretty hardcore, but not as hardcore as I became, meaning intellectually. I mean, I was not as committed in a certain sense as they were, because they were actually activists who committed their entire lives to the cause and stuff. But I went all the way and got a PhD basically in American history, but really with the intention of becoming an expert socialist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I know its ins and outs because of that, and I kind of. It didn't move me left. It didn't move me farther from them. Maybe it did in a little bit. But anyway, so it's sort of similar that you and I are sort of similar in this way, in that we got this kind of template from our parents, but then we filled it in with all the details we got, right? I mean, you went out and read everything about anarcho-capitalism.
I didn't read. I'm not a big reader. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Oh, no way.
I've never read Murray Rothbard. I'm a bad libertarian.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. Okay.
I'm not a reader. I just do not read books. Sometimes.
I love that.
I don't like it.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, I was sure you had read tons of books, and I was expecting to see a stack of books, and now I realize there are no books in this trailer.
Yeah. I listen to them sometimes, but it's podcast has been the main thing.
Really? Oh, you learn most of it from podcasts. Oh.
And just throwing a lot of, I think my ideas come through just testing them out with people. That's been my main exploration is arguing online.
So here's the thing that's happening, and which is that people are not reading books anymore. Mm-hmm. You know who's not reading books anymore?
Kids.
Me.
Oh, you? Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah. When I say this to people, they don't believe me.
Right.
Like I had a hard time believing you when you just said this.
You even wrote a book.
Yeah. I have written more books than I've read in the last year.
Yeah.
Now, I use books every single day, meaning, if I need to find something, I'll Google it. And then if it's in a book, I'll look at that page or two in that book.
Yeah.
And yes, I go to the library at Willamette University and check out scholarly books, and I use them too. I never sit down like my girlfriend does and read from cover to cover an entire book. That's only losers do that. Sorry, sweetie. Just kidding. No, I don't have time. Mm-hmm. I wish I had time. Although history books generally are pretty boring. Yeah. And nonfiction books are generally pretty boring too. I love novels, and I wish I had more time for those, but I don't read books. I don't have time. You know what it is? You know why? Because you and I, you don't have time either, because you and I have projects. Mm-hmm.
I got shit to do.
Well, no, I don't mean the yaks. I mean intellectually, right? You wanted to figure something out, or you wanted to figure out particular things, right? Yeah. So you weren't just like grazing, another yak reference here. You aren't just like sort of meandering through the meadow, right? Because people think of school that way often, right? Oh, well, we're just going to open the doors and you're going to walk in, and then you're going to look around and figure out what you like and read that. No, I mean, which can be the case with some people, but that's so boring. You knew what you wanted to find out, and you just went and got it. And so what you did was way more efficient than sitting down with, what's it called? Man in Society or whatever it's called. Rothbard's book. I've never read a word of Rothbard either. Why would I? But I've heard it's just like incredibly difficult and tedious. Yeah. So, and long. But you went to it, and you got the ideas you wanted. And I think podcasting, as a matter of fact, might be the most efficient and best way to do that.
Yeah, I think so. This is my current argument, because when I told some of my teachers, one of my teacher, he's a fan of you, actually, in fact.
No way. No teacher is a fan of me.
No, really. He didn't start out as a teacher, is the thing. He is
I planted him.
He was my history
the guy I paid, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean Jim. Of course Jim said that to you. Right. He's a teacher at the charter school here?
Yeah. Will Andrews. He was on the Yakkin podcast back in the day, but he he was one of those guys that pushed me and said, just go out and learn what you want to learn. He wasn't. A lot of teachers, when I start talking about dropping out of school, they're like, "You're going to end up being a fry cook," and here is the statistics.
And
Nick
you said, "I'll show you."
Yep, and I said,
"I'll be in a van by the river, raising some yaks in my dad's house."
Yeah, exactly. So, but he encouraged me to do to look into more stuff, and so he's been one of he's like, why? How can you not read books? Because he's had these philosophical conversations with me. He's like, you got to read books. I'm like, no way. And my argument now is, there's the way human beings have learned for millions of years. We didn't start writing until the 1400s, right? That's right. And even then, barely anybody knew how to read. So
that's right.
Of course, our ears and our ability to take up information, that seems to be more efficient. And just in my own life, but compared to if I read a book, I may be able to get more details, but I'll miss more too, I think. I get more of a broad scheme from the podcasts, and I really enjoy it. It's and I can do stuff. I can go out and work with the yaks while I've got my headphones in.
Yeah, that's right. So you said what I was going to say. Stop stealing my ideas. No, that we need to relax about that. Because it's pretty clear that that's what's going on. And certainly for younger people, I think it's true for older people too. And I'm just one example. I mean, hey, if I'm not reading books, right. But no, I think it's pretty clear for younger people. They're not reading books. They're not reading even long articles. I don't think much, right?
Sometimes if I'm doing real in-depth research, maybe.
Yeah. So, but I think that's just fine, because you know what? You're super smart. You're super smart, and you know a whole lot. Oh my God, do you know a lot? Oh my God, you're 19, and when I met you when you were 18, you were way, way, way ahead of Ivy League freshmen.
Sure.
I know, because I used to teach them.
Yeah,
in terms of knowledge. I mean, smarts is, you just get that. But I mean, in terms of what you knew, what was inside your head, the information you had taken in was, oh my God, you were like light years ahead of.
Sure. I started early. I think I started early.
But you weren't listening to podcasts when you were 5.
No.
So how'd you get the information then?
Well, it was from, when I started, it was from people that I knew.
Or 10, I guess.
I think I started just picking up ideas from my grandparents and from my grandfather.
Never a reader? You never?
Well, that's not true. I guess I did read, now I think about it, I did read quite a bit as a kid. Because I was never very outdoorsy. I liked my computer games, right?
You're super outdoorsy now, right?
Exactly, yes. Huh. And just about until I was 15,
the plot thickens.
I was a nerd. I'm a very different person than I used to be.
Okay.
I just being a very scrawny kid. I was.
Me too.
I guess I always knew I was smart. I was always told that because I excelled in school. So I had that. There was a cockiness there, and I just felt like, well, this is all I need. I'm smarter than everybody here, and I'll be able to, throw. And I had an advantage, so I thought, this is my proof, and I don't know. As I got into high school, I realized, oh, that's not true. And then as I got out into life and I made more mistakes, I'm like, oh, this cockiness is, this intelligence doesn't get me as far as I hoped. But it started out. Did I read books as a kid? I did. It wasn't a whole lot of nonfiction, but I did get more interested in nonfiction pretty quickly, and I read a lot more nonfiction than most kids my age. And I was definitely accelerated in the reading program. So I was reading, I read some of the classic American literature like Huckleberry Finn and I definitely read some.
Well, they make all of us read that. Don't stop bragging. Oh, come on.
So, but I didn't. There was a little bit of reading, and I did like to read a lot as a kid. Now I think about it.
You have a sister who's 2 years younger,
mm-hmm.
and she's not like this, right? She's not into big ideas and philosophy and politics.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
That you went there, and because people would just say, "Oh, well, your dad's is Svengali." Have you heard this? He took control of your mind and tried to make you into his protege and filled your mind with his ideas and, made you into a mini me, whatever. Well, I mean, I guess it's still possible he did that with you and not with your sister, but I tend to think that's unlikely. I'm guessing that what happened with you is what happened with me, is that for me, I just heard all these ideas circulating all around me. I had no idea what they were. None. But that's what the adults, all the grown-ups around me were obsessed with, talking about all the time. And they seemed to care about it all a lot. And so I got the one idea I got was that this stuff is important. This is what is important in the world, right? And so that was my mission, when I became conscious enough and able to learn. That's what I did. Because I realized when I was like 17 or 18 that I knew nothing about this stuff. And so I figured, well, it's like being raised in a church, frankly.
Sure.
For me it was.
Yeah.
Even though they were secular socialists. It's like, you don't need to tell your children that, Jesus Christ is Lord and the Bible is the truth. It's just, right? You don't say that. You don't need to. You just operate as if it is. But most importantly, you structure your whole life around those ideas.
Yeah.
And the way you talk and the way you think. And so it's just assumed by everyone that that's what you're going to do. Yeah. And so that was true for me. And then the next, 20 years took me to get out of the church in a way. But so I would bet that that's sort of what happened with you. You just heard this stuff, right? Yeah. And people cared about it. And so you had to pursue it yourself, right?
I definitely think so. And I know because right about when I was 12, like 10 is when I was like, oh, I'll call myself a libertarian. 12 was when I was like,
oh my God. Okay.
I'm going to, I take this seriously now.
I was 10 when I said I was going to be a socialist when I grow up. Yep.
But I definitely got those ideas of like small government. Let's decrease that definitely was talked about a lot, and that's something my dad would agree with. And my guess is you're right. That's where it came from. And then at 12, I decided maybe it was because I picked up what they were saying, and then I got my little thing to say out of it, and I threw it in, and then I got, oh, these guys will respect me, and that's that was a good thing for my family being very I don't know. It's just not very strict with the ideas. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying. There's a better way to say that.
What do you mean?
I was able to challenge what they believed, and to an extent, you know, when I said I was no longer a Christian, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal. But it, you know, my mom was like, "What? That doesn't like no way you aren't. Like that's not true."
And when was that?
That was when I was 12 or 14. I think it was 14.
Always ahead of the curve. I got to tell you, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So I that's where.
Are they still Christians?
Yeah. They
practicing.
Yeah, I don't know how much they really believe in the theology of, you know, like Jesus Christ was this carpenter from Nazareth that got hung on the cross. I don't know if that's, you know, they're very liberal. And they take they don't believe in the 6-day earth creation.
You said Mennonite. Is your mother's family the ones who developed this land first? Were they Mennonites?
No Mennonite history.
Oh, so they both converted into Mennonism?
Yeah. So when I was 10-ish, we started going to a Mennonite church in Corvallis, and it's a very liberal Mennonite. You know, there's maybe 2 people in the church that wear the bonnet and the jean skirts.
There's a Mennonite thing in Oregon, right?
There's a few.
A community here. Yeah.
There's some up in maybe I don't Halsey or not. Yeah, I think there's in Halsey, and there's one out in the woods.
I've seen them around. Yeah, in Oregon. Yeah,
there's some people that sell blueberries. They're at the Corvallis market.
My girlfriend's from Lancaster County in Pennsylvania, right? So it's all Amish and Mennonite, and I can never tell the difference between the two. And of course, she's an expert on it, but I still have no idea really what the difference is, and I don't think I care. But but converting to that, what's that about?
Well, so it's the Amish. Like the big difference is like the modern technology. Mennonites don't care about using electricity in cars.
Okay,
but
that's right.
The key parts of it is kind of the pacifism. So they don't work with governments.
Oh, that's good.
And they're very anti-war. And this particular church, I think that the Mennonites may have some issues with the conservative, because this is a big issue in all Christian communities, is the acceptance of particularly LGBT people. So I think this church that we go to, or I don't go anymore, is very liberal, and it's just not like very many Mennonite churches, I think. Yeah.
So they're into the gays.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's cool. Yeah, sure. I'll take that. Pacifists and not into government and like the gays. Yeah. Sounds like me.
Yeah, right.
Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
I've been converting to Christianity a lot lately. It's sort of a theme in the podcast.
I noticed I thought it was really funny that the people like the mother and daughter at the LA event. That was really fun. That was a cool conversation.
That was a wild one. Yeah. So she converted. Do you think she converted to that church largely? It sounds like because of the politics of the church.
Yeah, I think that's what they were looking for. There's plenty of local churches, but they're all evangelist pretty much, and especially the local community church. There's a good number of just people who are very conservative. I don't like. What is the mindset that I want to call it? It's they're not open to letting the gays in, and they're very hip to the end of the world stuff. And my parents just weren't into that. And so that's where they started out, and I was raised with a lot of Quaker teachings because we didn't go to church.
I was going to say, it sounds like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably for the first decade of my life, we didn't go, except maybe a couple times with family on holidays. We were just given those Christian teachings just from them on Sundays. But then they decided, you know what, we want a community. And we started shopping for churches, and that was one of the first ones. Actually, my hippie preschool teacher, she used to go there, and that's how we were introduced to it. But that church is just it's very different than the Mennonites. But that's what brought them in, was the kind of particularly the anti-war thing, and that's a big thing for my mom, and because of my grandfather.
I like her already. So your grandfather served in both World War II and Korea and became a pacifist.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if he'd call himself a pacifist. He definitely didn't convert to. My dad's looks like he's gonna start a tractor right in front of us.
That's what they do on farms, isn't it?
Yeah,
You people
probably won't be too loud.
Don't you guys start tractors all the time?
Sometimes.
That's okay. It lends authenticity to this
right.
podcast.
Yeah, it's too bad we don't have the rooster to it. I get that a lot into my shows. He wasn't Mennonite, but he definitely had the anti-war thing.
Did you know him?
Yeah. When did he die? He died when I think it was a while after I started doing the podcast. I think he died when I was 16 or 17. Okay. So it wasn't too long ago.
So here's the acid test for pacifism.
Mm-hmm.
Did he think that the United States should not have entered World War II?
I never talked to him about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't very...
That's the ultimate test.
Yeah, he wasn't very vocal about it. Like I just knew because it was more my grandmother. Like she was more into telling us, this is what we believe, and she was very liberal. She was a Texas Democrat. I don't know. I think maybe my grandfather got the anti-war thing from her. I don't know.
So you don't read books, but I'm going to recommend one to you anyway. I think you would actually like it a lot. It's by Nicholson Baker, who's a novelist, and it's called Human Smoke. Mm-hmm. And it's about World War II, in particular, American involvement in World War II. Mm-hmm. But he writes it. There's a couple things that are notable about it. One is that the way it's written, which is simply a summary of the news, the daily mm-hmm. news over about a 3-year period. Wow. I think he starts actually more than that. He starts in the mid-30s and goes right up to Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. So he'll just sort of report on what the news was for the day, of course, looking for particular things having to do with Germany and the United States and the question of intervention and all that, right? And the second thing that's notable about it is that Baker is a pacifist, and a real pacifist. People don't know this. I mean, it's a very sophisticated, developed ideology. It's mm-hmm. not just, I don't like war, right? He's that kind of person. He's that kind of pacifist. And a lot of what's in the book is a history of the pacifists mm-hmm. during World War II, who were the most courageous people in American history, or certainly among them. Yeah. And courageous, obviously, in terms of literally putting their bodies on the line, because some of them went to prison, right? Mm-hmm. Many of them did. Many of them were sent to work camps, which were basically slave camps. Yeah. And also intellectually and emotionally, they put themselves on the line, right? Because they were saying things that were just so radical. Still to this day, maybe even more so now, just beyond radical, so that radical leftists today look at them and think that they were horrible people, actually. Yeah. But their argument was totally right, I found mm-hmm. out. But I'm wondering if your grandfather was one of them, or became one of them, or was sympathetic to that point of view. Yeah,
I don't know. I know that there was just a few stories that, my grandfather, he was a big traveler, and I think that's where the sense of exploration of why I want to be different might come from. But he told a lot of stories, but he'd hardly ever tell the sad stories from war. But one time, I do remember my grandmother's like, "You got to tell him the story, Jim." And he kind of was like, "Wow." But he told it, and he just told a story about how when he was leaving some port that they started getting, I don't know where he was, but he started getting shelled on their boat that he was on, and they were all in a fleet, and they'd be watching boats to the left and right just get whacked, and then people falling off, and he told the really sad story, and he cried just watching people in the water screaming for help, and you can't help because you have to keep going, and he that I think really was what got to him was some of that post-traumatic stress. And that's really what made, I think, because I think I was already anti-war on principle when I'd heard that story, just because it's a terrible thing, and that's what I was taught, but that story really was what got to me, and I think that's where it
so you heard your grandfather tell the story. Yeah And you saw him cry telling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was pretty powerful. That's when I realized, wow, okay, this affected him.
Yeah, it didn't affect everyone that way.
No.
It's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
Because I think, how would it not? And,
it's interesting. I have a buddy, and I've thought about this too. I've got a buddy who I don't know if I've convinced him, but been working on it. He wanted to join the Marines right as he got out of school, and talked to him. I was like, dude, how can you be somebody who's like, that there's the chance of dying goes way up, and he's like, yeah, but he believes in the cause, and he's like, he's just a crazy motherfucker that doesn't care. That's what he said. Like, basically, like, I'll face death because I wanna go out there and see that action. I'm like, you might be a psychopath, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, guess what? I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, yes, I had a former Marine on this show who also became a cop later, and I asked him, and he's now a peace activist, and I said, so what's that about? He said, yeah, I just wanted to see the action. Michael Wood Jr. And, it was pretty clear that he just really wanted to shoot people. Yeah. I think he says this. I mean, I'm not telling tales here or making stuff up or speaking for him. I think that's what he says. And I think that's what goes on. There's a lot of people who join the military, I think for good reasons, actually, because their lives are completely unstructured and they don't know what to do. And, you get a mostly free education out of it. Yeah. Or at least you can, college education, get paid and all that, get skills. And I've known lots and lots of people who did that. And I think for them, it was the right thing to do. They tended to go into places like, the Army or the Navy, where they were just sitting on some boat off the coast of Libya, and had almost no chance of getting killed and weren't participating at least directly in the killing, although of course everyone in the military is, but they weren't directly pulling triggers. But yeah, if you're choosing the Marine Corps or the Special Ops, the way psychologists define psychopath, I'm sorry, but I think it fits. I'm not saying that is the way to define psychopath, but that's what it is. It's, a desire to do harm to other people, basically. Yeah. A sadistic urge. Anyway, so, all right. Back to you. I heard you on a podcast say, when you were 15, I believe it was, you were on a podcast and you said, you were talking about, you were still in school, I think. Oh, I know. You were wondering whether you should continue to be in your dad's school. We'll get to that in a second. But, and you said, yeah, my scores are perfect and I have perfect 4.0 and I know I'm smart. And okay, so here's what I was thinking when I heard you say that. Ouch was the first thought. And the second thought was right on. So the ouch, of course, is that Nick's got some hard times ahead of him or maybe already in front of him because kids, generally speaking, don't respond too well to that. Now, if you were Jewish, it'd be even worse. But I'm sure it was still not any fun being, as you said, cocky in that way around other 14 and 15-year-olds. So, yeah. But let me just finish, and then I want to hear what that experience was like for you. But and then on the other hand, though, God damn it, yeah, you are smart, and humility, that kind of false humility when you know you're smart but you're supposed to pretend you're not. Yeah, I think is not a good thing. Sure. And I love it when people violate this, here's a fancy term, principal bourgeois norm. So that norm, humility, modesty, right? That's an invention of the 19th century in the middle class and what we call the bourgeois class or the Victorians during that time, right? Dress modestly, don't ever brag, even if you're John Rockefeller. And well, you probably know some of this history from having known some of my work, but so like people who have been outside of political power, the marginal groups, are the ones who have been the least humble. Yeah. Like in particular, African Americans and slaves and prostitutes and criminals and the mafia and Italians and Jews before they became assimilated and all that, right? So that's one of the and you know who else is not humble and modest and he's hated for this? Who? Donald Trump.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So that's why I say that Donald Trump is our first black president. Right?
Yeah, because it's interesting.
Yeah.
I know this because I like rap music because of what this phenomena, I make a lot of money and here's my chains and here's my, it's like anyway.
Rappers loved Donald Trump until last year. He's somebody put together like a list of all the rap songs that Donald Trump is name checked in, and it's like hundreds.
One of my favorite Kendrick Lamar albums, songs, he says, I'll be on the golf course with Trump.
Yeah. So, all right. So how did it go down with you though, being black in your school?
Well, because the school I went to was K through 12. There'd never been more than 200 kids in that school.
Sorry, now we have to back up. Sorry. So your dad, he's established this school, or he took it over? What was it?
So your
dad is sort of famous in Oregon, by the way. He's sort of well known, especially in Oregon education circles. Notorious to some people, famous to others, right?
Yes, so, the unions hate him, and so does the PERS.
So tell that story. What did he do?
Yeah, so when my parents had kids, this is the story I heard. They didn't want to send us to the local public schools, and neither did some of the parents around. And so they're like, well, there's this old school that used to run in Kings Valley. Kings Valley School's been there since 1848. And they decided, well, let's start a charter school. And so my dad he was definitely one of the main people ahead of that project. He quit his job engineering and because, you know, he's you know, just, I think this is a natural thing, being very curious. For whatever reason, my dad learned to read law, so he can do it very well.
Jesus.
And so this is why he's become notorious, because he's come up with some very interesting loopholes
On his own. He just sat down with some law books.
I don't know how much help he's had, but definitely I believe that these are
with no training in law. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he was able to really help spearhead that project, and he wasn't the director at first.
So did he have to go to court to do this? Is that why he read the law books?
No, just because I have to read law books just because of business stuff, and I think that's
I see. Just to run a charter school. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So he took over the school. How old were you then?
Oh, he might have started the school. The school must have started when I was about 4 or 5.
Oh, so okay. So this was when you were starting. This is why he did it, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So that you could have a better school to go to. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good commitment by a father.
Absolutely.
To his son.
He quit his job, a decent paying job, being an engineer, to do that, and I got I don't know. It was a quality education compared to the kids who were in Philomath, you know, and that's. And I guess I took it for granted and threw it away, but no, I don't think it was that good either. So I started out there when I was in kindergarten, and I went through, being told I was smart, I definitely got cocky, and that was kind of I was popular because my dad was the principal. Like kids are like, oh, we got to be nice to him because Mr. Hazleton. Yeah,
you were the prince, right?
Right.
So how many kids were in the school?
When I first started, there might have been 50. It was very, very small, but it grew to 200. It was about like 195 when I left.
Because it was very successful.
Yes.
Academically.
Yes.
And became known nationally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
wasn't it number 12 last time I saw on one of those polls? I can't remember who did it, but it was most rigorous
in the
schools.
Country.
Yeah.
Most rigorous.
Mm-hmm.
Aha. Okay.
So a lot of AP classes. Okay. You know, I don't know. School was always easy for me, and especially up until high school is when it got hard. So he threw the book at the kids. Pretty much.
Almost literally.
Yeah.
The most rigorous. I see. But also, I thought they tested higher too, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have higher test scores. I don't know about compared to the rest of the country, but definitely compared to Oregon, we're pretty high.
Now, does that match your dad's personality at home? I mean, is he rigorous in that way generally?
I think my parents have gone through a couple different parenting styles. I think that most of their influences have come from Alfie Kohn, which is good. I might have been spanked a couple times, but rarely have I been hit, and I've been treated pretty well. And I would say,
what's the deal with Alfie Kohn?
He's the peaceful parenting. I think he came up with the term peaceful parenting. He wrote a book called Punished by Rewards.
I only know about him because
parenting.
I, for a hot minute a few years ago, was interested in the anti-homework movement.
Yeah.
Because I wrote a piece for New York Magazine a long time ago when Obama was ramping up No Child Left Behind, and I found out about some movement, and my son was about to be school age, and so I said, "What the is this?" And I kind of got involved, sort of, with the anti-homework movement. I think I may have talked to him briefly on the internet or something, but yeah. So I liked him at least for that, but I didn't know anything else about him. So he's the peaceful parenting guy. So. Yeah. I've heard this from weirdo libertarians like you. I don't really know what it means, though.
I guess I'm not super up to it, but I guess the idea behind peaceful parenting is to make your relationship with your child as much based on consent as you can. I think that's probably almost impossible, because there are some things you just need to keep children from doing. like dropping out of school. No, but it's mostly focusing on, like, libertarians are obsessed, at least my crew of libertarians, the anarcho-capitalists, are obsessed with the non-aggression principle. So since you don't, the child doesn't consent to being born and he doesn't consent to being raised, and then if you start hitting them, you're that's a prisoner, right? You've created this thing and now you're abusing it because it's not doing what you want it to do. That's kind of where that comes from. That's the best way I can simplify.
So there lies a paradox. I mean, at least in how people live. Yeah, I told this to my friend Camille Foster, who's he fancies himself a hardcore libertarian, anarchist, and he had his daughter was born this last weekend, and I told him before then, this last summer when he was on the podcast, actually, that your kid's the prisoner, man. Just that's the structure of the relationship. And he seemed to not really, he got it intellectually, but I don't think he really had thought about that until then. I said to him, well, you're going to find out soon enough. well, there you have it. And so this dawned on me too, when my son started rebelling against me several years ago. And I was like, what am I going to say to him? Right. Yeah. It's immoral of you to rebel against me. And because he, at one point, he's the one who instructed me of this principle, because he said, yeah, well, I didn't choose to be here, Dad. And I was like, oh, yeah, got me there. Boom. Yeah, that's a hell of a thing, isn't it? No one thinks about it that way, but that's totally true.
Yeah.
You didn't consent to be here, Nick.
No, right? I'm obviously very happy to be here. But yeah, no, I think that's important to me, is that relationship. And I've thought about a lot of it because of these libertarians and because of the relationship I've had with my parents, having to I guess having to rebel to get my way in some ways. Sometimes. So
no violence if you believe that your child is a prisoner, so you don't hit them. Okay, I got that part. But then, like, what about other forms of coercion, though? Because everything's coercion in parenting.
Yeah,
everything.
This is where it gets difficult.
I know.
I think the people that I hear from most are, their idea is to, sometimes you're going to have to make your kid go somewhere. If you need to go get groceries and you can't leave the kid at home, you're going to have to take them. And you're going to have to make them do that. But
wearing clothes,
right?
Bathing.
Yeah. You have to do all these different things. But the idea, I think, of the peaceful parents is to find a way to reason with them. And this is hard. I don't know how, because I'm not a parent. I don't know how to do that.
I mean, I'm talking about, a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So I don't know the specifics.
Well, I've met some of these people. This is part of unschooling also, right? A lot of unschoolers believe in peaceful parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do with that. I mean, I'm all, hey, go for it. Experiment. I'm fascinated, but I don't know how that works. And I've also heard some unschooling parents express a lot of concern about what they're doing.
Yeah. The thing is, like, for me is like, the way I would argue for this is to provide your kid the most freedom you can. So especially because I think you want kids to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But it has to be a safe mistake, a mistake that's not going to crush their, confidence, or a mistake that's not going to have them, flattened out on a road. Right. That's so I'm with you, where it's, how do you be peaceful every single time? How do you, have a win-win situation every single day with your kid? I don't know if that's possible. I've never done it. I've never tried. So I think my thing is just provide the most freedom that you can.
It's constant aggression, though. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's constant aggression, parenting, right? Because you weren't allowed to go onto that road, right?
Right.
When you were little. Well, that's the same as telling the slave they can't leave the plantation. If they go over there, they're going to get either they're going to get pulled back physically, right? Which is a violation of the NAP.
Yeah.
So how did your parents deal with that? How did they?
They weren't. They weren't like hardcore.
How did they contain you?
They did it physically. They used coercion, and not until probably I dropped out of school did they kind of ease up on that strategy.
When you were a teenager.
Yeah. I think that the typical, what I got most of the time is, here are the things that I need you to do, Nick, from my parents. You need to do your homework, you need to do these chores. If you don't do them, you're going to get in trouble. We're going to take something away from you, or you're going to lose this privilege. and there's like certain things we expect of you, and if you're not going to do it, we're going to punish you. And that's where it was, and it
just like the state.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, it didn't work. I was punished for not eating all of my dinner, but guess what I did when they'd make me sit there until I ate it, and then as soon as they weren't looking, I'd just dump it all in the compost,
just like the slaves.
So it just
That's
it didn't
right.
work,
Yeah.
and I was that's the thing, is every kid is gonna, if you violate their consent, they're gonna be upset about it, and you have to do it in a way that's gonna be the least impactful, right?
Yeah. So, do you want to have kids?
I do hope so someday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too when I was your age, even younger than you. Yeah. And I don't regret it at all.
Sure.
But I've had some different ideas about exactly how and how many I would have. But yeah, so so how committed are you to this idea of? So you're gonna give birth to a slave, or your partner will, at least, whatever.
Right.
You're gonna have a slave, right? You're gonna create a slave, Nick.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
So
good.
I've been more. I just accepted that this kid is going to be my slave until, like, this is what my dad said. His joke is, you're my slave until you homestead your body. Until you've shown that
Wow.
you've put enough work into it, right? To be, he just made it was just a very he was his joke. So
Yeah,
he didn't have
but
a
I'd be like,
specific
the
standard.
fuck, Abraham Lincoln? Like, you didn't. Again, I didn't choose this.
Uh-huh.
Homesteading. Come
Right.
on, man. You just let me go.
Yeah, so we'll see. I imagine that I don't know. I think that I would try to treat my kid the way that I would have been wanting to be treated when I was younger, but with the understanding of the consequences, because I've lived a little bit longer, and I don't know if I appreciate that my parents made me do certain things that I really didn't want to do. I don't know, because like especially dropping out of school. I tried to drop out of school for a year, and they just wouldn't let me.
It's a bad look for the principal.
Yeah, and it didn't end up well for him. I told him that last year I was in school. It's like, you either let me get out or I'm failing out. And then at that point he's like, well, fine.
Okay, so let's figure that out. Okay, so
Yeah.
you were in his school from the age of 5 until 15 or 16?
16, yeah.
5 to 16, so 11 years. K through what, 10? 10th grade? 9th grade?
Yep, 10th
grade?
Mm-hmm.
And you just aced everything, right?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And you just kind of did everything that school had to give, right?
Mhm.
You just consumed it and gave it right back. You just, right?
Yeah, and I didn't enjoy it.
Its utility was exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
When I was, I don't know, in middle school, that's when I started disliking school, where I was like, man, if I can stay home, I'm going to do it.
How are you, this is what I don't get. How are you simultaneously excellent at it and hating it?
It's a good question.
Because I couldn't pull that off
my
myself.
Critical thinking, I think, is good. Like I have an understanding of all these subjects because I'm good at learning, but I didn't see the applicable side to a lot of it. So why am I learning cursive? I don't need to write in cursive. I type. Why am I learning environmental
They were teaching
science?
you cursive?
Yeah, not in high school, but
But still.
right.
Wow. As of the 2000s, right?
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah. So I think the kind of part of like I excel at school and get praise that I think reward wore off, and we didn't finish this. I was really cocky, and so a lot of the kids still liked me, I'm normally pretty nice. But when I started talking about ideas, and more I got interested, and whenever I had the opportunity, just more and more people are like, "Oh shit, here goes Nick," and it just kind of it wasn't more of a dislike. It was more like, just shut up, Nick. I don't want to hear this.
Well, because you were a racehorse in a field of cows. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just had all this energy and all this ability and all this, energy. You wanted to do this and you wanted to run real fast, and they couldn't run fast and they didn't really want to.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Right?
And then I held it above them.
What are you going to do, man?
Too. So
What are you going to do? It's our lot in life.
yeah.
I don't know.
So I think.
Oh, then you okay. You held it above them.
Yeah,
What
so
do
that
you
was
mean?
even worse. So, and it would be more specific people that I think I was closer to. Like, just particular. Like my best friend was been one of my girl cousins that were here for my whole life, Becca Barnhart. So I would just being comfortable with the people that I was comfortable with. I didn't care so much about the feelings. I think the people I didn't care about, I was so nervous. I still had those social programming to be nice and to watch myself. But with other people, I got comfortable enough to be like, well, they say something stupid, I'm going to say it's stupid.
You were comfortable enough to be an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just people didn't
I know
like
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I had a lot of difficulty with that. And then that really sparked something in me that I really just started not liking people in general, because I was talking about these ideas. I'd gotten into libertarianism and I'd learned about it. This was about freshman year, and well, I guess maybe it was a little bit earlier that I had been interested. But I had this relationship with a girl who, for a couple years off and on, it's like a middle school thing. So it's like, what is this? And it was just drama. And so I was particularly really mean to this girl about these ideas, because I'm like, why don't you care about these ideas? And actually, this is actually two relationships I'm thinking of. Now I realize why I was confused. So in middle school, I had this relationship with this girl, and I was talking about these ideas, and it wasn't quite anarchism yet. It wasn't the non-aggression principle. It was just random
hold on.
things.
She's like 14 at this
point.
Okay.
Yeah, we're 14, and I'm like,
and you want to know why she's not an anarchist,
right? And
a particular kind of anarchist too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so she eventually we broke up because just whatever happens.
Well,
and
she decided to be a left anarchist, of course.
Yeah, right. No,
she went the Bakunin route.
I think that what actually happened is when I was very religious at that time, I was very into Christianity, and I was very spiritual, and I thought I had like a message from God that I shouldn't be pursuing a romantic relationship at this age. So I decided, well, I'm going to break it off, and that really broke her heart, and she was very upset about it, and I that's when I sort of realized. I guess maybe that isn't. I think then so she went to another school. I didn't see her for a long time, and then she committed suicide.
Whoa.
Yeah. This is where I stopped being so much of an asshole.
Wow. Because
that hit me hard, and so I was at 15, right into freshman year. So I was I had that. I just didn't like the people around me because they weren't interested in what I thought was important. I thought, well, the world's going to go to shit because none of you care about the non-aggression principle and these ideas that I'm talking about, at least scaling back the government at the time. And then that happened, and I was like, well, that was the first time I'd really had to deal with grief. That was the first time anybody close to me had died.
Guilt.
Yeah, a lot of guilt. I didn't know how to process it at 15, and nobody taught me, and I didn't reach out for help. And I pretended like I was fine, and I just really built a resentment of the people around me and myself. So I was just really upset with where I was at in life in my freshman year, and I was just looking at everything like, well, this all sucks because I don't like where I'm at. This place sucks. The people around me are terrible. They don't like what I like. The people at home they don't understand what I'm dealing with because I don't want to tell them, that I'm depressed and I'm not happy. And then, I'm doing all this work that I'm like, well, my only option is to excel in school because that's what I'm good at. And I'm going to become a lawyer and then maybe a politician so I can further this cause. And I looked at it. I'm like, that's another 7 years of school. I'm barely dealing with this 3 months I've been in, high school. How am I going to do it? And it got to the point where I was suicidal and I just didn't know what to do, and I started listening to School Sucks right about then. I was finding a little bit more confidence, and I was dating this girl, and I still had some of that. It is this new girl, and now this is when I really went hard with the libertarian anarchism, and I basically manipulated her into converting to libertarianism, and after that relationship just went downhill because I was an asshole, and not like she was very mature herself, right? But that's when I think like after the girl committed suicide, that kind of hit me with, okay, I made a lot of mistakes, and then the next relationship kind of showed me, wow, you really need to change what you're doing. And that's right when I found School Sucks, and I was kind of being introduced to some of these ideas like nonviolent communication and this idea that I could even leave school. So all of a sudden, at freshman year, I had this, I realized, oh, here's the hope. I can get out. I can become a farmer, because I realized that while I was doing 4-H, I raised lambs and steers. I was like, this is the only thing I enjoy, because I had to go do basketball, which I didn't enjoy at the time, and then the rest of the time was at school or at home doing homework. And that was like the few hours every day that I got working with that steer was, that's what I enjoyed. So I think that's where it's maybe not where agriculture came from, but that desire to, I need to do the yaks. And I came up with the yaks. And that's when I decided at the end of freshman year, that's when I started talking to Brett more. And when I decided, I'm going to do this.
What was the girl's name?
Lily Stagner. You can look her up. She's got there's a Lily's Lope for Hope marathon here.
So when I said you felt guilt, I was right.
Yeah.
You felt responsible for that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Huh. Do you still think you're responsible?
No. I pretty quickly realized that on the intellectual level, like, you can tell yourself, it's not my fault, but I still felt it for a long time. I think, because I don't know, I'm obsessive in the way that I think about things, and that's, I think, where a lot of my ability to dive deep comes from. Like, it was just such a deep pain that I thought I have to figure this out, and so I did a lot of exploration of how do I feel, just because I wallowed in it.
So you were obsessive about the pain.
Yeah.
Or you obsessed with the pain.
Yeah, and
like, how bad was it?
It was rough, because now I've got so much distance to it. I barely remember Lily. It was I don't know. It was enough to put me, because it was the grief, and then it was also the stress of not being able to get what I wanted out of the people around me in life. That together, it really made me pretty seriously suicidal for probably 3 months. It was a year that I dealt with the whole, I guess, sadness, the despair of losing somebody like that, and then the just frustrations over not being effective with my strategies and spreading the ideas of liberty.
Really?
I think
you were worried about that at that point.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Definitely. I was, that was a big part of why why I started podcasting too. That's right when I started, I guess, too. This was all at 15. But yeah, I think that I pretty quickly realized, okay, I hadn't talked to this girl. I hadn't talked to Lily in a year and a half afterwards. I hadn't seen her at all. So I thought, well, but it's very unlikely that you affected her life, Nick. So and it's, well, I don't want to say that, at least to that extent. And there had been a lot of things that had happened in that girl's life that had definitely were more contributive. So she just had a lot of mental issues. She did not have a good past.
Yeah. And so it sounded like your parents or the people around you weren't aware of this?
Yeah, I would say so. At least
of your depression.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. And I eventually,
why is that?
I hid it. I think I was pretty good at hiding it. I don't know where I learned it, but I'm good at putting on a smile. and I'm somewhat good at ignoring things until I'm alone. I can distract myself very easily, but and that's actually why I like being alone now, is I've been able to find this is where I have some strength. I can deal with things. But anyway, I think I kept it hidden well enough, and there wasn't a lot of like I say, suicidal. I never attempted to kill myself, but it was, it's that thing in your head that's like, I don't like life. You have a way out.
How far did you go with that? Did you make plans?
No, there was a couple times where I sat with a knife or a razor blade, and I thought, well, can you do it, Nick? And I just said no. I just got scared, which is good. I'm glad, because it was a serious contemplation. I don't know if I never got to the point where I'm like, this is the day, but it was just always fighting it. Yeah.
So I'm thinking of something, and just tell me if I'm imposing my own ideas or my own experience onto you. That just reminded me of something. So my father was an engineer too, and he was a computer engineer, sort of similar. Sure. And I've realized, that comes often with a personality. There's a type, right? Who goes there for good reason. I mean, it requires a particular kind of very intense concentration, rigorous, rational thinking. And there's simply not room for someone there's simply not room for rumination or pondering emotional questions, I guess.
Yeah.
When you're doing coding, which is what my father did.
Sure.
But, I don't know your dad. I met him briefly.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, it sounds like maybe stuff like feelings and particular hard feelings are hard for him to talk. For my father, he was emotionally retarded. I mean, he had the Down syndrome of EQ. So my mother, on the other hand, and I don't know anything about your mother because I haven't even met her, but she was very good at that stuff. But I live mostly with my father, so that's why when something terrible would happen to me, he knew nothing about it. And so just wondering, if that is, so. Does that make any sense for you? I mean,
I would say that probably was true. It was just never we talked about philosophy and politics, but never emotions. I never got.
That was my dad.
No, really. I had no training of how to deal with things. I've lived a very privileged life. My parents are upper middle class. They've always had an income. I've never starved. I've lived here my whole life. I've basically had no hardship until Lily died. But I don't think it ever. I don't know if I ever had a reason to need it so much. But at that, it just wasn't there when I did.
What about your mom?
She's definitely more emotional than my dad. In the recent past, before, after all this came to light and I told them about it, she was very comforting. It was it's like, not, I don't want to say like my parents were distant, because they've always been interested, but I don't, it seems like she was more affectionate in a way, than he was at the time. Yeah.
For whatever reason, you thought you couldn't tell them, right?
Yeah, I think I was scared of I don't know. It was a lot of things. Like, I didn't want to disappoint people. Was a big part of it, because I thought, well, like, because some of it was the Lily thing, and then some of it was my despair about my future and the future of the political world. But I think it. I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about someone else now. My son.
Yeah.
So it's not just that a parent's lack of emotional intelligence would cause the child to not speak to them about painful things. Because I think I have fairly high EQ, certainly as far as men go. And I demonstrated nothing but constant interest in him, as you said your parents have done with you. And I'm sure that's true with you, right? Constantly interested and pretty constantly asking him questions and constantly saying, hey, talk to me. Tell me what's going on. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? You seem to be sad. Why are you sad? Which I didn't get from my father. But nonetheless, my son has found it nearly impossible to talk to me about his feelings.
Yeah.
It's one of the great frustrations of my whole life, because I thought, I'm going to correct what my dad couldn't do, right? I'm going to be the opposite of my father. And I kind of have, but there's something missing though. There's something that I'm not doing, probably that I'm not aware of, or that I am doing that I'm not aware of, that causes him to have the same reaction. It sounds like you've had with your parents about these things. So, because he unloads on his mother all the time.
Sure.
Every feeling that crosses his little mind, she finds out about immediately, good or bad. But I hear about them a month later from her.
Sure.
I hate that.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
So I'm saying I'm taking some of the heat off of your father and mother for this,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just life's mystery. And it's also a great frustration for me. And I bet it is for them too in some ways.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I'm thinking because I've thought about this a lot, I've thought a lot about how I was raised and how this has affected me, especially recently. And that's one of those things I've wondered about. Because I think I'm very emotionally intelligent. I've done a lot of work on trying to understand my human psyche, particularly, and especially how to interact and deal with emotions. But it didn't come from them. It came from, School Sucks, his series on nonviolent communication and self-esteem.
I don't know where it came from, but it came from you, and that's why I'm here. So believe me, there are plenty of anarcho-capitalists out there I could be interviewing right now, right? Of your age.
Actually, yeah, I know a few.
I could throw a rock and hit a few, and it wouldn't be a problem to find them, right? So, but that's one of the things I picked up from you when we met, and that's one of the ways in which I thought you were remarkable. Not just that you were intellectually tremendously sophisticated and comfortable with adults and your mind and ideas, but yeah, you had an emotional maturity too.
Yeah. I think it was because I had to deal with that grief. I had to figure out, what am I going to do here? Because I had all these ambitions, and then what was holding me back was this depression that kept me from doing these things that I thought were so important.
Yeah, that's been
so frustrating. Right?
That's the funny part, that you were still you were frustrated that you weren't getting the message of liberty across.
Right.
When you were 15.
That's all I cared about at the time.
I mean, the ambition is way out there.
Right.
Way out there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to do a lot. And I still do.
And you still do. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's where the emotional intelligence, I had to adapt, because I realized that I'm not going to get where I want to go if I keep holding on to these feelings. And so over the next couple of years, and I got out of school, and then I started working here on the farm by myself, and I've learned a lot of lessons, and I'm still learning a lot about just how to manage myself and my time, and then my stability of my mind. And I'd say only over the last year have I really conquered that depressive tendency. It's just been rough, but I think that's where it's come from. It's been that need. It's like I realized I need to do something with my life, because that's just what I found. I need to be working on something meaningful. And if I'm not able to, I learned how to, I guess I processed the trauma of how did this little girl committing suicide affect me, and then how have these other things I've been, all these other things I've been raised with, how has that affected me? And that's been, that's where it comes from, I think.
So you connected Lily's death with your dropping out of school. Was that a cause?
I probably would have dropped out of school anyway, but it might not have been that intense. That desire might not have been intense, because I think one thing that it taught me is, you could die tomorrow, Nick. Because I realized a little bit of mortality, that, life is important and I need to take it seriously. And, that builds off of like, you're not doing well enough. You're not converting all these people to voting for Gary Johnson or whatever. And I based my self-worth. So I guess, and it definitely pushed me to get out of school, because it was so I realized life's important. I have these things I want to do. You need to do them. And what's in your way? This schoolwork. And then throughout this has been my life, figuring out what is in my way to get the things I want to do done. And that's been how I've learned.
So you started listening to pot. So you dropped out. Your dad didn't like it. Not a good look for him. Although when I met him with you last summer, and he seemed okay with it.
Yeah, I convinced him over my freshman year, or I guess over sophomore year, to let me do it. I decided the end of freshman year, I'm going to get out of this school early if I can.
And I think what he said was that you had just done everything that they
pretty much
had to offer, right? Like you finished the work that they had, right?
I finished a lot of it. I was accelerated in math. I think I had my language arts, maybe not all my language arts credits, but I had my math credit for sure. All that I needed for high school, and then I think I had my science done, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, where'd you get this ambition from?
I don't know.
Because that's really sounds like why you left. At least that's consciously why you did, right? That because you had these things to do in the world, and this is holding me back, which is true. That was holding you back from doing things in the world. But very, very few kids drop out of school for that reason, right?
Right.
Most people drop out of school because they just can't handle it, or they're screwing up, or they're addicted to drugs. You dropped out of high school at the age of 16 because you wanted to change the world.
Right.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't know where that drive, ambition comes from. I think that it's, I think it's, part of it is a genuine, I genuinely want to help the world. I see issues that I think could be solved, and I think I can help solve them, because I think I've solved some issues for myself, and I can help others do that. That's where a lot of it comes from, but it wasn't. That's something I've only really consciously realized. It's definitely been part of me subconsciously for a long time, and one of my theories might be that I got a kick out of being different than other kids, because I was different, because I was the prince. And then I got a kick out of having being smart, because adults liked it. And then I got a kick out of throwing these ideas around. Somehow I got the moral superiority
being
thing.
Smarter than everyone else.
Yeah, and so that really fueled me for a while, and then it has slowly become,
including the adults.
Yeah,
in most cases,
definitely,
maybe all cases, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so now I think it's become more of I realize I've got this much time on this earth, and I've got some things that I can do, and it's been, I guess, some of it, I guess, is the fear of the depression. Like, that kind of fuels me, and it's not always good, because it can go, it's pendulum swings, and then it's actually keeping you back. But just that fear of those bad feelings. I don't want those, and I didn't want them, and I think that I thought that, well, this having well, yeah, I guess I don't know. That is why I just, where do these things come from? Where does
I don't know. Yeah, I can't explain myself either. Mm-hmm. It's just, isn't it amazing? It's just a weird alchemy. You just can't. Yeah. Some things I just think we can't explain.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, your father clearly had some ambition, because he
Definitely.
became a pretty, quite a successful engineer, right?
Yeah.
But that's a different kind of ambition.
Yeah. And he also wanted, to start the community school, right? So
That's
he
true.
had some of that.
That's right.
Community-oriented desires.
That's true. But yours outstrips that. Yours is global.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Like literally global.
Yeah.
You want people in Bangladesh to think differently.
Absolutely.
Or at least, you think there are ideas that could make them live better.
Yes, absolutely.
So did you talk to anyone who you couldn't talk to your parents? Did you talk to anyone about this? Obviously the question is always about a shrink. Did you see a therapist?
No. I actually, so I had that girlfriend I had in high school. There was a little bit that I was able to, but just because we were young and we weren't emotionally intelligent, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And there were maybe a couple other friends, because everybody that I knew Lily, and so there was some, but it's more of the, right afterwards, it was a lot of sympathy, and I don't like sympathy, especially at that time. I really hated feeling like
Have you talked to anyone about this until now?
No, well, yeah, I've talked to a few people, and I've talked about it on my podcast a bit, and I've gone into depth. So I've never talked to a shrink.
To a microphone?
Yeah, I've talked to people too, but
okay.
just, face to face a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I've had some more, with some of those friends that were affected a few years afterwards. I think we became more close and kind of like, okay, we can talk about this. So a few of us talked about it, but not very much with adults. And I've never seen a professional. Mm-hmm. I for a lot of the time I bottled it up, and I kept a journal just so I could release.
You were also out of the church by then, right?
Yes.
So you no longer had that.
Yeah. And that was a frustrating thing too, because I broke up with this girl because of my Christian beliefs, and then I decided I didn't believe in God before she died, and then she died, and I'm like, oh yeah.
So whatever you think,
asshole.
Whatever you think about the theology, I mean, I think that churches in general serve a great purpose for a lot of people.
For sure, community,
and often counseling.
Yeah,
right?
And I'm with you on that, and I've thought a lot about it. Like, man, if I had just thought, like, if I had just known that people do care, and I had just kind of, I don't know why I didn't realize that because people were interested. They asked me about it. You know, how do you feel about, you know?
Oh, you thought that people didn't care?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe, yeah, I think that's because at least from, you know, I'm thinking, like, because we're talking about emotional things. Like, I was never very emotional, and that was the first time I'd been hit with a hard emotion. Like, I wasn't, yeah, I'm not a very sensitive person. I just never have been. Emotionally.
No, that's not how you read to me. I mean, I don't know you well enough to really
I'm not
say,
sensitive, at least I'm able to deal with these things. Like, I can talk to you about my complex emotions of, you know, how I feel about my parents and people, but I'm not a big fan of letting that affect me, and I've always had that.
Yeah,
and it's changed.
Me too.
And it's changed. I've become more vulnerable, for
sure.
So
I think the word that Shrinks would use is relatedness, and I picked that up from you immediately, which is you're very related.
Okay.
A lot of people, you talk to them and it's clear they're not really quite here, and they're not really sort of in you when you're talking. They're not really hearing. They're not really even anticipating what you're going to say, which is what someone, not to guess what they're going to say, but you're sort of like so inside of what they're saying.
You're following them. You're following their train.
Tracking is another word. Yeah. So this is definitely what I pick up from you is actually a very high level of that.
Podcasting,
especially among your political colleagues. You know, it's you're notorious for being not like that, right? So I'm going to stop, by the way, using this slur on the spectrum. I found myself using that a lot, and I hear it all the time. By the way, so fancy New York libertarians, that's what they say about you.
Yes.
All the other libertarians in the world, they're all on the spectrum. We're the cool ones in New York City.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, when I saw that happening, I was like, yeah, no, this is not okay. But it's a slur, and I'm not sure what it means anymore.
Yeah.
And then, or, you know, Asperger, this, Asperger, that. And my father, sure, probably would have been diagnosed as being with Asperger's. Yeah. But anyway, whatever that thing is, whether it's a medical condition or not, like, you don't have that. Sure. You're not like that at all, and it's immediately apparent. So you know, so in terms of sensitivity, like how much you feel, that's a different question.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the ability to communicate that we're talking about here. I think. I don't know what emotional intelligence is, but anyway, sensitivity is a different thing than being able to talk about things fluently, having to do with emotions and feelings. So you were pretty alone. Yeah. And still kind of are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I've built I have a much better friend group than I used to. And I've, and just within the last 6 months, I'd say have pretty broadly, or I guess, well, how would I say this? I've conquered a lot of my shyness, and that's where a lot of it comes from. Is they just, I don't know, it's just an uncomfortability around people. It's tending what I've worked
so funny
to overcome
again.
it.
That's not you,
right?
You seem to me the opposite of that. Yeah.
Like, I would say, if you asked me for an interview like 3 months ago, I would be so nervous. I would have been like, holy fuck.
You weren't nervous for this?
No,
Well, now I'm a little insulted.
Sorry. Okay. I don't get nervous anymore because I've just...
Do you know who I've interviewed, Nick Hazleton? You're lucky that I'm here in your fucking trailer next to the river.
That's right. I'm on the same podcast of so many great names.
You should be thanking me.
Yeah. But
so really 3 months ago, I think so. You've changed that much that quickly.
And you know what? A lot of it has been the usage of psilocybin, messing with mushrooms.
Can we talk about?
Yeah, absolutely.
What you're doing?
Yeah,
okay,
talk about
so you're growing psilocybin in this van.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally.
And I'm, some people are like telling me, Nick, you can't talk about illegal things. I'm not scared. Like, I'm not selling them. I don't
think the cops are going to come.
They don't care about me out here in the woods.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is a tool for for therapy, it's been very interesting. And I've learned a lot about my own fears, particularly from that. And I wouldn't say been very pleasant experiences, but definitely worthwhile. I've had plenty of, I don't know how many times I've done them now, but the first couple times it was not so fun.
Ballpark. How many times?
Under 10. It's about 7. Yeah. So not very much.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But over the last 6 months, is when I haven't been able to find them. I'm really interested in foraging food, so I know a lot about mushrooms in general.
Oh, yeah.
And then it turns out they fucking grow out in the yak pastures.
Psilocybin does?
These are here.
Oh, wow.
It's psilocybe semilanchata. It doesn't grow in the shit like a lot of people think. It just grows with the grass. There are mushrooms that grow with the shit, but
wow. Yeah. Psychedelic mushrooms right here. Under the yaks. Who knew?
Right. And this year is the first time I've been able to find them. But so
you have friends, you mean in real life, IRL,
yeah.
You do mushrooms with.
Yeah. So we've kind of, it's kind of the Kings Valley School Stoner Crew is what I'm calling it.
Okay.
It's all the kids that started smoking. Like the only people there's been people who've gotten in trouble at Kings Valley a couple times, and but there was never really anybody that had been there for a long time. And then as I started the 10th grade, when I started to drop out, that's a little bit after I got out of school, I started smoking weed with one of my buddies. And so we became pretty good friends, just hanging out, just, that's the way it went. And then, one of my other buddies, he's been really interested in like the foraging and wild aspects. And so he started dating my cousin. And so we started hanging out, and we bonded over just going out and finding edible mushrooms, and now I guess I'm wondering, but so now we've put together a couple more people, I guess, and it's been very interesting because we've grown a lot since this has happened, and now we're they're much at the same level of some of these understandings as I am, and I'm very impressed, especially with they've got a particular friend who's younger than me now, and at first, I think a lot of the people of my age, it just wasn't encouraging for me because they weren't at my level. Because I was mostly interested in intellectual things, and now I'm still very intellectual, but I've drifted more towards being more interested in particularly interacting with people, and then interacting with the outside world. I've become much more interested in nature and I guess psychology, but those guys have been. That's a much better place because now I have these people who I can lean back on, and I don't have this attachment to the libertarian ideas either. So people don't get as upset with me. But I've been able to build this friendship with these guys where I can be that asshole, and even some of them are more of an asshole than me. So this kind of natural. I don't remember where we started and why we're talking about this.
I do. Keep going.
Okay. But these guys have been, I think I guess particularly the last year, we've been doing a lot of bonding. And then as we've gotten into psychedelics together, I think that's been a great help for me to just to deal with working with people. Cause my kind of reaction to a lot of them at first is, I've been talking about doing so much shit for a long time, and I overpromise. I've just been very good at overpromising and underdelivering, because I have all these ambitions, right? And so they've watched me fail so many times, and having some people who understand that I'm a failure, but then now have also seen that that what I have done, and that I'm actually, it's been very nice for me. So these people are much more interested in what I'm doing with the podcast, and the farm. We've got a kind of a business project that we're starting to work on, and so this has been the probably the, I don't know, it's been a big influence on the current state that I'm in now, and I'm very positive and optimistic about it.
You don't think you're a failure, do you?
No, I don't think so. And
you can't be a failure when you're 19, first of all,
right?
No matter what you've done,
right? Yeah, I think
well, except according to Nick Hazelton,
right?
Because you've been ambitious since you were what?
Since
5,
9,
9. Yeah. Certainly, when you were 14, you thought you were a failure.
Definitely, and I I've gotten like, I don't know. I think I'm at this stage in life.
You know, even though I've been messing with you about the van down by the river, I mean, even on paper,
yeah,
right? Even according to social standards, you're clearly a success.
Yeah.
In many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even according to normie culture, you are a success. Yeah.
And I've definitely claimed more of that success as I've gone.
An astonishing success, actually.
Thank you.
In many
I'd
ways.
like to think so.
You have a goddamn business, dude.
Right.
And you had a podcast. And, you know, I mean, you're an expert in multiple fields pretty much already at the age of 19. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So
You want to know what I was doing when I was 19?
What were you doing?
No, you don't. I was getting high every day. And working at a cookie store.
Fun.
Cookie. I said that.
That's
what I said.
Great
cookie,
for
like
a
chocolate
young
chip.
stoner.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Oh, amazing.
They paid me $3.50 an hour. $3.50 an hour,
$3.50.
which was 17 cents over the California minimum wage.
Wow.
No, when I was this morning when I was getting ready to come over here, I started to think about when I was your age, and it took me down that lane. And I realized that was the bottom for me.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it was sort of fun, but talk about a failure.
Yeah.
Because I, unlike you, had a C average in high school, and I was going nowhere at that point.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so you got friends here, you do mushrooms, you talk about stuff. You talk about feelings ever? Because boys don't do that.
No, we typically don't. We've been doing it more and more. And I'm really, this is where I'm particularly excited, because I've never found people who, like, I've just felt like there's nobody out there except these people I found online that are actually interested in changing this world for the better, and you know, exploring ideas and particularly becoming very impressive young men.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. So what are your buddies doing? What are their plans?
Right now, my youngest guy, he is in school still, and well, I haven't ever talked about this. This is the first time we're dropping this project idea, but my goal, our goal is to take some of this farmland that we have, and like I only have so much I can do. Like I can barely manage a hog herd and a yak herd, so I'm hoping that I can bring all of these. There's about 4. I guess there's 5 of us. Yeah, 5 of us that we're hoping I can at least bring some of them slowly into this business, and we're gonna start our own food-based business and agricultural business, and we're really that's the plan, and we're figuring it out. We're hoping that we can start our garden this next year, and then we can start at least 3 of us can start doing it full time. We've got another buddy. He's going to school. I don't know if he'll ever join us. He's going. I think he's hopes to go to medical school. And then I've got one of my buddies. He's working a job, and we're trying to start a mushroom business. As we like right now, we're doing it. We're harvesting and selling mushrooms, and the other guy, he's I won't say anything, but he's just not doing much.
You did say before we started that they're traveling, and it's made you feel bad.
Some of them have gotten to travel. Not my closest buddies. Who am I thinking of? There's just a few people, not a whole lot of people from school. There's a couple of my friends who are traveling just the country. But I know. Oh, and I guess a lot of my Mormon friends. So none of the stoner crew are Mormon, but they're all about to go off on their missions.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, not yet.
Right. They're going to do big time traveling.
Yeah, for 2 years out and about. But
okay, so you're an anarcho-capitalist. You believe in free markets, and you believe in personal responsibility and independence.
Mm-hmm. To a degree.
And you dropped out of high school in order to not only promote those ideas, but also to pursue them yourself. Yeah. Right? And so you've been at it for 4 years now, right?
Yeah, coming up on 4 years I've had yaks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, to do that, so you dropped out of school and you started a yak farm. So you bought some yaks from a place in Bend, Oregon, correct?
Pine Mountain
the only
Ranch.
place that grows yaks.
There's
in
small
Oregon?
guys. Largest yak operation on the West Coast.
And quickly, why yaks?
Yeah, why yaks?
Quickly,
there are. It was random choice. I thought they were unique and really cool.
Was it really random?
Yeah, pretty much. But then I looked into it, and they're a very hardy animal. They're just a really good livestock animal because multiple uses and very disease resistant.
So entrepreneurial. was an entrepreneurial choice, right?
Yeah.
You saw like a business opportunity there, something that maybe a market that hasn't been filled yet or something.
Right. I saw a niche that
Cool.
I thought was cool.
All right. And 4 years into it, how's it going?
It's not as going as good as I thought it would be when I first started. I thought I'd be making a lot of money by now. But it's been a lot harder than I thought, and I think that's fine with me really at where I'm at. So I'm starting to make a little bit of money. I don't fund myself completely during the winter, but during the summers I can, I've been able to make enough money to live off of and put away. It's not a comfortable living, I'm living in a trailer, right? But it's enough for that, and then it doesn't stop being fun is the thing. I've never been happier in my life. It just keeps getting better. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. I think we started off with 4 yaks. I've got 17 now and a total of 30 in our herd. And I share a herd, so. And
you sell the meat.
Yeah.
Mostly at the Corvallis Farmers Market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this next year I'll be at the McMinnville Farmers Market and Corvallis.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it must be hard being an anarcho-capitalist and being dependent.
It is, and that was a big pain for me up until recently. That's a big reason why I thought I'm not doing enough, because I can't sustain myself because I'm living off my parents.
Yeah.
And now I don't like it. I think so. I don't pay. I pay rent in the form of meat, so I supply a large part of our food source. But I'm still eating the rest of their food, and I like. I don't. So I've kind of changed my mind on where I want to go. I've thought about, do I really want to be independent and fully on my own, or do I want to make this more of a family unit and work with these people more? And both of, I think my family is with this too. We haven't talked very much about it, but I think, that's the direction we're moving in. It's less of this kind of nuclear family unit idea and more for the, being
the whole clan in the valley here.
Yeah.
Because you said that your mom's family has owned all the land in this little valley right here that we're in, for generations, So you do know how many 19-year-olds are independent, right?
Not very many.
Almost none.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know one of my friends, actually two of my friends are independent at 19.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, my guess is actually the lower you go in the economic order, the more you're going to find independent 19-year-olds.
Yes, and that's true.
Working class people tend to, because they have to by necessity, send the kids out into the labor force right away. But yeah, middle class kids, especially like you know where you're supposed to be now, right?
College.
Well, yeah, I mean Harvard though. You're supposed to be in the Ivy
law
League.
School.
And you'd be dependent. Yeah. I mean, you might have gotten a fellowship or a scholarship, but that's where you're supposed to be, Nick. And boy, your life would be different now.
Fuck yeah, definitely.
And you don't regret it, do you?
No, not at all. That's the best choice I ever did, was get out of school.
Yeah, I struggle with you because you know what adults do, right? They just, I need you to do for me what would make me feel good. I don't even know though at this point. Of course, I'm famously anti-college now. So
yeah.
No, I don't think would be better for you. In fact, I think it would be worse. Well, it'd be worse for the world.
Yeah,
if you were at Harvard. I think it's great that you're doing your podcasts from here.
Yeah,
in this van by the river on the yak farm, and that you're living completely unlike anyone else is.
Yeah,
anyone.
Yeah,
doing all the things you're not supposed to do.
Yeah,
yeah. In every way possible. The only thing that I am, and we talked about this before, that I wonder about is, as I said, sort of your mind is enormous, but your geographical life and demographic life is very small. Yeah. And you basically have never been out of Oregon except for, right?
I've traveled a little bit. I've been to a few states. I went to New Hampshire and visited those guys. I've got family on the East Coast a little bit. So tiny bit. So
part of me wonders what would happen if you just left for a while.
Yeah.
Just for a while.
Yeah.
Just took a big long trip somewhere.
Yeah.
I just wonder. I don't know. What do you think?
I have no idea because it's never happened. Pretty much all the people that I have known who have traveled tell me I should travel.
I know. I'm sure they have.
And I definitely want to. It's part of the someday. I like if I ever get anywhere, I have to get to Tibet.
Where the yaks come from.
Yeah, that's my goal. If I don't get there, then I really am a failure. But I don't know when it'll happen. At this point, it's hard for me to leave the farm. That's one of the downsides to this lifestyle is I've I have to settle down.
That's right. Being a farmer is you are tied to the land, aren't you?
Right. But I am learning more and more about how because it's a seasonal job. It's kind of like the opposite of teaching, where you have the summer off. Well, I have the winter off, kind of. So you brought up this idea to me while we were talking earlier, and I just never really thought about. I've always thought about. I shouldn't say always, but I want to travel, right? I have this idea that I should, but I haven't really thought about when could I do it. And
well, you were talking about your difficulty marketing the yak meat, right?
Yeah.
Selling to restaurants and markets and grocery stores and stuff. And I said, you said, what I need to do is talk to other yak farmers. And I said, yeah, great idea. How many are there? You said about 50. And I said, you know what you should do is get in a van that moves and go all around the country and interview them for your podcast. And you would kill a couple birds with one stone there, right? You'd see the country, you'd travel, you'd leave this place for a while, see the rest of the world or some of the rest of the world, and you'd also learn how to market yak meat.
Yeah.
So I think you should do that. And man, I cannot wait for that experiment.
Sure. Yeah, I'm definitely going to put it on my calendar to see if I can do it. I'm going to start planning my next year here soon.
So if you're listening to this and you want Nick to do this, I want you to give him some money. You have a Patreon page, right?
I do have a Patreon.
What is it called?
I think it is patreon.com/justYakkin. That's YAKKIN. JUSTYAKKIN.
Go to that page and give him some money.
Absolutely.
Because you need a vehicle. You need a vehicle.
Right.
That's what we're doing here. We're going to raise money to get you a vehicle to go. And I'm not saying you need to leave this farm. I'm not saying you're wrong about your choices here. I'm not. I just want to see what'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see.
You may also come back and be like, Jesus Christ, America sucks.
Yeah, I know.
Because you don't live in America. You know that, right?
No.
This is not America.
No.
And much of it does suck. You will not like a lot of it. But I want to see.
Sure.
So I hope it happens. Yeah. Well, all right. But now you're committed to staying here. Right now, your idea is that you will die here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not soon. I mean, you're going to live a long life as a successful yak farmer, but never leave this plot of land, right? Born, raised, and
there's a pride thing there, and that's the only reason.
Oh, really?
Why else would I do that? It's just I don't know. The only reason I feel a connection to this land.
Yeah, of course you do.
And I think most people, like we were talking about earlier, most people don't have the experience of living in the same place. I don't think people get that. There's the relationship with the earth and your land. We've been very disconnected, especially in the industrialized world, because we're just not reliant on it as much as
because of that capitalism thing, Nick.
Yeah,
why do you like it so much?
Well, this is why I don't like it as much as.
Oh, you don't?
Right. So that's why I don't call myself an anarcho-capitalist. And because I'm more interested in these things, because I've looked a lot about at what matters to me in life, and I found that I don't really care about the non-aggression principle. I care about me and the people around me.
Good.
And the experience of what it is to live on this life. Because out of how many times I've been called a bad anarchist because I believe in defensive voting.
That's going to be your first book.
Yeah, bad anarchist.
Bad anarchist.
It's a good, because one of the introductions
You're going to have to read some books first before you write one. But anyway, if you ever do get to that, you should call it bad anarchist. Okay.
That'd be great. But yeah, I think that is I think that part is lost, and I think that the way humans have been living, and especially in the last 200 years, is very different to the last million years. And I've been kind of, with my introduction to psychedelics, I've been very interested in Terence McKenna, and I like his idea of the archaic revival of going back to a more tribal, community-based system Don't know how I'm going to get there. That's my utopian plan, but or my idea. But then trying to live it out is what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to build the community that I want.
But with free trade,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Among and between
Absolutely.
these communities. And how about migration?
Yeah. Absolutely. Open migration.
Cool with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing about sustainability and localism, which I know you're also into, right?
Yeah.
Because you market your what do you do with the yaks? That's about that.
I guess I say it's regenerative farming.
There it is, regenerative.
Yeah.
Why should I care?
Because not only am I sustainable, I'm actually improving and regenerating damage done to this land. There's not very much damage done to this land, but my thought is I'm not only keeping it a sustainable. Here's the thing about sustainability is it's almost impossible, right? And I'm not so much interested in supplying everything I need, but at least providing more value than I take, if that makes sense. So there's a regenerative agriculture movement, and there's probably
I'm sure there is
a definition to it, but that's where I come from it.
But is it a moral claim? Are you saying it's a universal good?
I don't know. I wouldn't say a universal good, but in my experience, I guess I haven't had much experience with the community, but what I see is when I see a community that is interested in each other, just in the small scales that I see, those people tend to be happier. And if you can, because being a libertarian, I was very individualist, and I thought I need to do this all on my own and become the macho man, whoever Imran has that character, right? And I've kind of, as I've realized that it's really hard to be independent, because I took this and I moved off grid. I was living down by the river for a while.
Even more by the river.
Even more by the river.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, this was closer.
With no electricity.
No electricity.
Oh.
I had a propane camp stove. And
when you were like 17 or something?
This was this last summer.
Okay.
So I was 18. And that was really hard because I didn't have some of the stuff I needed.
Yeah, no kidding.
And man, if I had some people that were, that I have now, I have some kids, my age, they're interested, I can get these projects done so much more easily. Huh. And it means more to me than the kind of accomplishment. I think it means more to me to say that I'm providing this good for my community than to say, hey, I'm obviously a brilliant person because I came up with this business idea and I've executed it. Part of it, I still like, I'm proud of myself. I think I've accomplished enough, but I'm not trying to sacrifice myself as an individual, but I'm becoming more and more interested in how do I improve the life for everybody around me, because that makes life inevitably better for me.
Yeah. So capitalism sucks.
Yeah.
In some ways.
In some ways. It's probably the best thing.
And in some ways it's fabulous. But for me, it sucks in that it is a system that really creates and probably depends on nonstop anxiety. Existential dread. At least that's how I've experienced it. Now, my chronic anxiety since the age of 4, has multiple causes, no doubt. But once introduced to the capitalist world, I think it increased considerably. And so you have been talking about extended family, this clan you've got here in this valley, and about community. And I like the sound of that. Because what capitalism, at least in this country, in this culture, says is, as you were saying, you got to do it yourself. You're on your own. And then it gets merged with masculinity too, in these really nasty ways that hit us especially hard. And, if you ever ask for help, if you ever tell your parents you're unhappy about something, sad, feeling guilty, whatever it is, or need a loan from your parents or anyone else, or even the bank for that matter, you're a failure. And very much is what this culture tells us, in particular men. So there's 2 good antidotes to that: the extended family and community, like the one seems to be you're developing here. I mean, who knows what your buddies are going to end up doing?
Sure,
but you've got the right idea, I think.
Yeah,
because man, do I wish I had those things.
Right?
I mean, I'm developing them now. By the way,
sure.
Since moving to Oregon is the first time I've really focused on where I live and tried to build a community. I kind of hate that word, but still, I'm going to use it. A community of people here, you know. So actually, you're part of it.
Sure.
Like we have some mutual friends around here. Yeah.
I want to say this real quick.
Yeah.
One of my most exciting things was somebody talked to, like, one of my hippie farmers. Actually, I've had at least 3 people tell me they know you. It was,
God.
Keith and John.
So Keith and John own the breadboard.
Yeah.
The bakery in Falls City, which is a town sort of like this. Out here. Yeah.
And then
They're awesome.
Greg and Ann Oldham.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were telling me, and I was like, I've had these people tell me about Thaddeus Russell. I'm like, you know Thaddeus, because nobody knew about school socks. I'm like, you know who this guy is?
I know.
It got me so excited. And anyway, so that it's really cool to see how our circles have.
Yeah, John told me he said, this guy Nick came up to me at the farmer's market and said, so you know Thaddeus Russell?
Yeah, I was so excited.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And then like in Salem itself, there's a bunch of people I've met who, again, sort of similar to what you were saying. Like, they're not really political people. Sure. I don't talk to them about American history, and I don't want to. But I really enjoy knowing them, and actually I just love being able to hang out with them.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that in Los Angeles or New York. I'm not really in New York either, but certainly not in Los Angeles. And I just feel like there's an opportunity here to do that.
Sure.
So
I'm hoping so. This is my opportunity that I'm seeing, and everywhere I look, it just looks optimistic to me. Like, the only thing I see being my failure is if somebody steps in and says, nope, you can't do that, like the government, or I give up.
If it weren't for technology, I would be more sad about you staying here forever, right? Because the thing you definitely would not get is, you know, access to the world of ideas and cultures and all sorts of things. But my God, you have access to much of that. Now, you may not be able to taste and smell it.
Sure.
But you certainly know a whole lot about what's out there that wasn't available to people on farms not long ago.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, nowadays, it kind of makes more and more sense to decentralize the way that you and I are decentralized. You know, I've been decentralizing myself, right? Moving away from those big cities.
It's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, man. And so, and you kind of were born decentralized, and you're embracing it still when most kids run away back to the big cities, you know, from their little towns. Yeah. So, but I think nowadays, let those cities go to hell. By the way, Los Angeles and New York, I know you haven't been there, but they are unlivable.
Yeah, I visit Portland. Salem sucks.
Portland, hey now, easy buddy.
Salem.
Easy buddy. Salem is great. Portland is the best big city left in America, and it still has problems.
I enjoyed it a lot more than when I visited even Grand Rapids or Detroit.
Portland is like heaven compared to other big cities in the States. So they're all going to hell, and everyone's very sad about it. San Francisco, my hometown, right? You can't live there unless you're a billionaire. Yeah. And people are so sad about that because, oh my God, it used to be where the hippies hang out and the beatniks were and all the counterculture was. And, oh, boy, isn't this terrible? I'm like, no, it's not terrible. We all just left and went somewhere else. Why don't you just come join us? Right? So I love the idea that you are very consciously attempting to build something like that, an alternative countercultural space here. Yeah. Right? And just, we need more of that.
Absolutely.
People just, and I don't need people to stay in one place forever, but just establishing new places where we can do different things and think different ideas.
Absolutely.
And hang out with each other.
Yeah.
And occasionally do mushrooms.
Yeah.
I like it, man.
That's the dream.
I like it. I just want you to do the one thing for me, and then I'll leave you alone. I want you to go travel.
Absolutely.
Just for a month or two.
Absolutely.
Go talk to some yak farmers.
Yeah. I know. And
then check back in with me.
Absolutely. I think that'd be really fun.
All right, Nick, I think we're done here.
Cool.
So good luck tonight. I think it's going to be 20 degrees tonight. In the van here.
I've got a nice sleeping bag, and the heater will keep it about 45 in here, maybe.
Oh my God. Well, you're a rugged individualist, so you'll be fine.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
This was the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. To sign up for the Renegade University webinars, visit thaddeusrussell.com/courses. To support the show and become a member of the Unregistered community, go to unregisteredlisteners.com. Thanks for listening.